Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring a really fascinating story. It's one of those unlikely global impacts, rooted in friendship and just a really bold leap of faith.
It really is quite something.
Yeah, we're diving into the world of DNA genetics. And this name, well, it basically became synonymous with setting a global standard for certain agricultural products.
That's right.
But here's the interesting part. They weren't just focused on potency, which was kind of the main thing back then. They zeroed in on something most people barely knew existed: terpenes.
Exactly. Those aromatic compounds, the things that give you the distinct scent, the flavor, even influence the effects. It seems obvious now, maybe, but back then, not so much.
Not at all. So how did it all kick off?
Well, it's a pretty wild origin story. Back in 2003, you had these two childhood friends, Don and Aaron, and they took this, honestly, an audacious leap. Just 200 euro.
200 euros.
Yeah, 200 euro for a one-way ticket.
Oh.
From Los Angeles straight to Amsterdam. And they weren't just, tourists. They showed up armed with all their knowledge from California, their herb knowledge, and this really prized seed collection they built up.
Okay, so what was driving that? Why Amsterdam?
Simple, really.
Yeah.
Prohibition back home in the U.S., it boxed them in.
Yeah.
So they figured, all right, let's set up shop somewhere we can operate. Amsterdam became their global terp base, as they called it.
A 200 euro leap of faith, LA to Amsterdam. That is, you have to admit, that's the kind of move that makes for an incredible story, isn't it?
Absolutely. Takes guts.
So our mission for you, listening in on this deep dive, is really to unpack how these two guys, starting literally from a basement, how they essentially wrote the playbook for a whole industry.
Mm-hmm.
How did they build this global empire based fundamentally on flavor? And, how did their specific genetics become what they say are the parent genetics behind half your stash, all while sticking to this core belief?
Terps don't lie.
Exactly. Our terps don't lie. So we'll dig into some surprising stuff, like how they really proved that terps could win trophies, not just THC.
Which was revolutionary at the time.
Totally. And also the smart ways they managed to scale globally without, selling out.
Right. Because in those early days, Don and Aaron, they weren't just growers. They thought of themselves as curators.
Curators? How so?
Well, their process was super intensive. They called it basement bred, cup tested. Think years of meticulous work, like phyto hunting.
Which is like searching for the absolute best plant traits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hunting for those unique characteristics and painstaking clone collecting, preserving those perfect genetic copies.
Yeah.
Plus, they used everything they learned from their trips back in the 90s going to the High Times Cups.
Ah, okay. Soaking up knowledge.
Totally. All that intel gathering, that's how they built their foundational blueprint for what made a winning strain.
Wow, it sounds like it worked fast.
It's incredibly fast. By 2004, their shop, DNA Genetics, is open near Dam Square in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Busy spot. And then just months later, bam, their LA Confidential strain hits the podium. First major award, right out of the gate.
Months. That's astonishing pace for a new venture, isn't it?
It really is. Speaks volumes about the quality they brought immediately.
So talk about that trophy case. It's not just one win.
Oh, no. It's legendary. They stacked up over like 200 awards eventually with strains that, people instantly recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Martian Mean Green, Kosher Kush, Chocolope.
200! That's almost unbelievable for two friends starting out like that. But, okay, beyond just the sheer number of trophies, what was the real signal those wins sent? What was the game changer?
Right, and this is the key insight, I think. DNA Genetics proved terps could win trophies, not just THC.
Okay, unpack that a bit. Why was that so significant?
Because before them, the whole conversation almost exclusively was about THC percentages. How strong is it? That was the main question. People often ignored or just didn't understand the rest of the profile. The terpenes, the other cannabinoids.
The flavor, the aroma.
Exactly. By championing terpenes, by winning because of those unique profiles, DNA didn't just collect cups. They fundamentally shifted the industry's focus. They sort of ushered in this new era where other cultivators started thinking, okay, maybe this aroma, this flavor experience, maybe that's what we should prioritize too.
Mm-hmm.
It reshaped everything, from product development to what consumers started looking for, beyond just getting knocked out by THC.
That makes sense. It educated the market in a way.
In a huge way. And it also brings up how smart they were with their branding. They really pioneered this idea of breeding as branding.
What do you mean by that?
Well, take Chocolope. Fantastic example. Originally, they just called this strain D-line, kind of generic, right?
Yeah, not very memorable.
Right. They rebranded it as Chocolope. And that wasn't just slapping a new name on it. It literally flipped that strain from being ignored, like collecting dust in the corner, to becoming a massive bestseller. It was this brilliant demonstration that, the name and the flavor profile, they matter just as much as the lab results showing THC percentages.
So storytelling through the name and the experience.
Precisely. And then they rode that wave. They really led the whole OG Kush wave, this global surge in popularity for that specific type of profile. They were dominating cups everywhere with strains like Holy Grail, Skywalker, OG Tag 18, Kosher Kush.
All those iconic OG names.
Yeah. They effectively brought OG Kush genetics to the world in seed form, making it accessible globally.
Okay, so they mastered branding, they shifted the focus to terps. And if we're talking specific strains that made a huge splash, we have to mention Tangie.
Oh, absolutely, Tangie. 2013. When DNA dropped Tangie, as they say. That was another earthquake.
What was it about Tangie? What made it such a global phenomenon, especially for those citrusy flavors?
Well, the impact was just immense. It single-handedly revived citrus terps worldwide. Before Tangie, those bright tangerine, orangey profiles had kind of faded a bit. Tangie brought them roaring back.
Really? To the point where...
To the point where, honestly, it's a bold claim, but probably true. If you've smoked a fruity sativa in the last decade, odds are it traces back here to Tangie or one of its descendants.
Wow. That's incredible influence from one genetic line.
It's a massive testament to their genetic influence, yeah. How one carefully bred release can just ripple out and define a whole category for years.
So they've got the genetics, the awards, the branding. How did they handle going global? Because that's often where companies stumble, right? Especially maintaining quality.
They were incredibly smart about it.
Yeah.
In 2015, they made a really significant move. They partnered with Canopy Growth in Canada, specifically their brand Tweed.
Okay, Canopy Growth, that's a huge player.
Exactly. And DNA Genetics became the first to export verified DNA genetic strains into Canada's brand new legal market. That was a big deal.
The first verified export. So how did they structure that? Did they sell the whole operation?
No, and that's the clever part. They had this unique model. Own the IP, empower cultivators.
Own the intellectual property.
Right. They kept ownership of their unique genetic blueprints, the core of their value, but they licensed it out, empowering other cultivators in different legal markets to grow their strains to their standards.
So they could expand their reach. You mentioned Jamaica to Germany to Arizona without actually selling the company or losing control of the core genetics.
Precisely. It allowed them to scale globally without selling out, keeping the brand integrity intact.
Did that model, the licensing model, present its own challenges, like ensuring everyone grew it exactly right, maintaining that DNA quality?
Oh, for sure. It's always a balancing act. But they were apparently very strict with their licensing agreements, focusing heavily on quality control. Their whole reputation was built on those reliable, consistent genetics, so making sure partners upheld that standard was absolutely paramount. You can't have your name on something subpar.
Makes sense. You got to protect the brand.
Yeah.
And then things started changing back in the U.S.
Exactly. And you get this wonderful kind of full circle moment. As laws began to loosen in the States, Don and Aaron started launching their genetics back home.
How did they do that? Was it just through stores?
They used a few avenues. Their website, DNAgenetics.com, became a key channel. Plus, they did limited collabs with specific growers, released clone cuts, actual living plants, and other special projects back in the U.S. market.
So even though they expanded back to the U.S., their base remained Amsterdam.
Yeah, they highlighted that while they were still very much rooted in Amsterdam, those cali terps remained core to their identity. It really shows the enduring pull of where they started, and their dedication to those specific flavor profiles that defined them early on, no matter where they were operating.
So let's talk legacy. When you look back at everything they've done, it's pretty immense.
It really is. Their legacy feels absolutely locked in. I mean, they're in the High Times Hall of Fame.
That's huge in that world.
Huge.
Yeah.
Plus the 200+ awards we mentioned. The fact that their strains were literally day one flower on Canada's legal shelves when the market opened.
And here's a fun little detail I read. Apparently, Don and Aaron were the first Americans to buy legal weed in Canada.
Get out.
Really?
Yep. And guess what strain they bought?
It had to be one of theirs, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
A DNA strain. It's just
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And it brings it back to that idea that their parent genetics are behind half your stash. Their influence is just baked into the modern market.
And if you connect all those dots, you see their mission hasn't really wavered, right? It's still about our terps don't lie
Yeah.
and encouraging people to grow your own, understand the plant, their whole story can be summed up from garages to global flavor powerhouses.
Yeah.
And it all started with friendship, was built on genetics, got validated by all those cups, and ultimately it was powered by terps.
That's a great summary. So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's incredibly clear how Don and Aaron, through DNA genetics, took this thing that started as maybe a niche interest, a passion, and turned it into a globally recognized empire. They
Yeah.
really proved the power of deep genetic knowledge, didn't they? And that unwavering focus on quality maybe over just hype or potency numbers alone.
Absolutely. Which kind of raises an interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. What does this story, the DNA genetic story, really tell us about the value of genuine expertise and, passion in a market that's evolving so fast, especially when maybe the conventional wisdom was pointing elsewhere, just focus on THC, focus on quick profits.
That's a great point. And maybe one final thought to leave you with. How does a company's commitment to the fundamental truth of its product, like DNA's whole philosophy that our terps don't lie, how does that build not just a successful brand, but an enduring legacy, one that actually shapes an entire industry? What lesson is in there maybe for any field where quality and authenticity are really paramount?